We're moving in Friday. Selena said, her voice bright and casual as she set her fork down. Connor already promised me the Lakeview room. I felt the air leave the dining room like someone had opened a window in winter. My fork hovered above my plate. Across from me, Connor stared at his water glass, swirling it slowly as if he could disappear inside it. I'm sorry. I asked, my voice steady, but thin. Selena smiled, reaching into her oversized purse. Just until our foundation work is finished. You know how bad the cracks have gotten. We've already picked paint colors, something soft for the kids, and maybe a pale green for our room. She fanned out a deck of pastel swatches across my table, as if she were presenting plans to a client. My table. The one I'd sanded and stained myself when grief had kept me awake nights. I wasn't aware of this arrangement, I said. It's just sitting there empty, Selena replied with a shrug. You hardly even go up anymore. Connor finally looked up, his eyes darting from me to Selena. It's only for a few months, Mom. We're in a bind. You've already given notice at your apartment, haven't you? I asked, more statement than question. Selena's smile faltered, but only slightly. Of course. We had to plan ahead. The kids are excited, they've picked out their rooms already. I set my napkin down, smoothing it flat against the tablecloth. You've made a lot of plans, I said, quietly. We're family. Connor offered his tone, practiced like he'd rehearsed it. I took a sip of my coffee to keep from saying anything I might regret. Their voices blurred together as the children argued about bedrooms. Selena reached for her wine glass. Confident the matter was settled. But inside me something had shifted. I was no longer stunned. I was taking measure, and as I watched them chatter about curtains and storage, I knew exactly where this conversation would lead next. It's just for a while, Selena said, like that somehow made it acceptable. 7 months max. The contractor thinks he can finish even sooner if the weather holds. 7 months. In my home. Without asking, Connor leaned forward, elbows on the table like we were negotiating terms, not rewriting reality. It's not a big deal, Mom. You're always saying the place needs life in it. I said life, not chaos. I replied, my voice firmer now. And I certainly didn't say I wanted my house repainted without so much as a phone call. Selena didn't flinch. She reached for a roll, buttered it delicately, then turned to the kids. Tell Grandma which rooms you picked. I want the one with the balcony. Their youngest said, mouth half full. No way, that's mine, the older one snapped. I already called it. I looked at Connor. They've already been to the Lakehouse. He hesitated. We drove up last weekend, just to show the kids around. You weren't there. I pushed my plate away. So you visited my property-assigned bedrooms and made renovation plans, all without telling me. It's not like that, Connor said quickly. We just needed a solution and it made sense. You don't even use the house that much anymore. That's not the point. It's temporary, Selena chimed in again, and we'll take care of everything. You won't even know we're there. You're repainting walls, assigning rooms, bringing furniture. You'll be there. Loudly. The table fell quiet, except for the clinking of cutlery and the distant hum of the dishwasher. I looked around, trying to find something familiar, some anchor in this conversation that still belonged to me, but it all felt like it had shifted, like I'd slipped into someone else's script. No one asked me. No one even paused long enough to consider whether I might say no. And now I realized saying no would mean becoming the villain in a story I didn't write. I remember the first time I drove up that gravel road. The lake house had been sitting empty for 3 years, windows clouded with dust shingles curling up like dried leaves. It cost me $625,000, every cent of my savings, and the payout from selling the little condo I moved into after the divorce. Everyone said I was crazy to buy it. Everyone except me. Back then, the rooms smelled of mildew and disuse. The dock was half sunk, the railing warped. I spent every weekend and most evenings driving out after work, hauling tools from my trunk, learning how to sand floors and patch walls from videos on my phone. $90,000 more in repairs, roofing, plumbing a full kitchen gut, and still the house was mine to fight for. Then came the flood. 2 summers ago, while Connor and Selena posted photos of cocktails and parasailing from Aruba, I was knee-deep in dirty water, ripping up warped hardwood before mold could set in. The insurance adjuster came, once shook his head, and left. No one stayed to help me carry out soaked furniture or scrub walls until my hands cracked. I patched, bleached, and painted every inch alone. It was supposed to be my retreat, a place where I could finally sleep through the night without checking locks twice, where silence felt like safety instead of loneliness. I planted flowers, rebuilt the dock, and learned how to breathe again on that porch. And now, sitting at my own table listening to Selena claim the rooms, I could almost see the water rising again this time, not from a storm, but from a slow, steady tide of entitlement. They thought, because I had built it quietly, it was somehow open for the taking. I folded my hands in my lap, feeling the familiar ache in my knuckles from years of work. There was a time when I would have sighed, let it go, told myself it was family. But as their voices swirled around me, I began thinking of another folder I'd kept tucked away in my desk drawer, and what it might mean to finally use it. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stood up, walked into my study, opened the drawer, and pulled out a folder of documents. Selena's pastel swatches were still scattered on the table. Mine replaced them with silence. "What's this?" Connor asked, his tone wary. I opened the flap and turned the pages so they faced them. Permits, contracts, work orders. My finger tapped the first page. Full renovation. 9 months. Starts Monday morning. Selena blinked, the smile she'd been wearing slipping for the first time. "You're renovating? I've been planning it for months," I said. "New windows, new wiring, new floors. Every room down to the studs. The contractors are already lined up and paid." Connor sat back, arms crossed. "You didn't say anything." "I didn't need to," I replied evenly. "It's my house. My decision." Selena leaned forward, scanning the papers as if a loophole might appear. "But our things, our plans. This can't happen now. We've already given notice." "That was your choice," I said. "This was mine." For a moment, no one spoke. The children stared at me, wide-eyed forks suspended. Connor rubbed his forehead like he'd stepped into a meeting he hadn't prepared for. Selena's manicured nails clicked against the tabletop, a rhythm of disbelief. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that the house isn't livable?" "Not for anyone," I answered. "Construction crews start at 7 a.m. Monday. Every room will be gutted." Connor shifted in his seat, the practiced calm he wore as armor beginning to crack. "You blindsided us." "No," I said, closing the folder and sliding it back to my side. "You blindsided me. I'm just following through." The table went silent. Selena reached for her glass, but her hand trembled enough to spill a drop of wine on the linen. I gathered my napkin and rose from my chair, already thinking about what else I needed to prepare before the crew arrived. Connor's voice softened the way it always did when he thought he could pull me back. "Mom, think about the kids. They're counting on this. You know how stressful moving can be for them." Selena jumped in before I could respond. "We already gave notice, Maris. We don't have anywhere else to go. You can't just let your own grandchildren be homeless." She glanced at Connor as if for backup, then back at me, eyes glistening in that carefully rehearsed way. I folded my hands on the table, letting their words drift over me like a draft from a door I no longer intended to close. "You should have secured a place before giving notice," I said quietly. "That's not my responsibility." Selena's lips parted, but Connor cut in. "You've always said family comes first. This is what that means." "No," I replied, keeping my tone steady. This is what entitlement looks like. The children had gone silent, sensing the shift. Selena reached for the smallest one's hand as if the gesture alone might sway me. "You're breaking their hearts," she murmured. But her eyes stayed on me, waiting for a crack. My phone buzzed in my lap. A message from Miguel. My contractor materials delivered. Cameras installed. Locks changed. I felt a small current of calm run through me as I read the text. Everything I'd put in place was moving forward exactly on schedule. I looked up from my phone, back at the faces around the table. "I'm not breaking anyone's heart," I said. "I'm holding my boundary." Selena's expression flickered confusion, blending with irritation. Connor leaned back, crossing his arms, his jaw tightening. They were so used to me bending that they didn't recognize the sound of me standing. I rose from the table, smoothing the napkin onto my plate. I pulled up to the Lakehouse just as the moving truck blocked the driveway, its rear gate already open. Selena stood near the cab, barking instructions, while two movers unloaded a dresser. She didn't notice me right away. Not until I stepped out of my car and calmly walked to the gravel edge. "Stop unloading," I said firmly. Selena froze mid-sentence. "What are you doing here?" she asked, a fake smile tugging at her lips. "We're just getting a head start." I handed her an envelope. "That's a 6-month paid contract for a climate-controlled storage unit. The address is inside." "You're welcome." She didn't even glance at it. "We're not putting our furniture in some warehouse. This is our home now." Connor already said yes? I didn't. She stared at me, stunned. The movers hesitated, sensing the shift. Selena turned on her heel and marched up to the front door. "Fine. We'll get settled and discuss this later." She called over her shoulder. She pulled out a key, the spare she shouldn't have, and jammed it into the lock. Click. Nothing. She tried again, twisting harder. A robotic voice announced, "Unauthorized entry attempt detected." Alerting property owner and security provider. My phone buzzed. A live feed popped up showing Selena on the porch, confused and suddenly small. "I had the locks changed last week," I said, "and added cameras. The house is under renovation. It's not safe or legal for anyone to move in." Her face twisted, rage and disbelief colliding. "You can't do this. We're family." "Then respect the boundary I just gave you." She stormed back toward the truck. "You'll regret this." I stood still, arms crossed, watching as she barked orders at the movers. They didn't look happy. Connor's car pulled in behind the truck. I didn't flinch. He stepped out, looked from me to Selena, and sighed. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" I nodded toward the posted permit by the mailbox. "Exactly what I told you. Renovations start Monday." The truck didn't leave. Instead, the movers rolled the mahogany dresser back down the ramp and set it directly on the edge of my lawn. Selena stood next to them, arms folded, triumphant. "We'll just keep everything here until you come to your senses," she said. "You clearly need time to adjust." More pieces followed the kids' bunk beds. A leather couch I vaguely remembered from Connor's first apartment. A dining table I'd never seen before. One of the movers glanced at me apologetically, but Selena gave them a sharp look, and they kept unloading. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. Instead, I stepped back into my car, pulled out my phone, and dialed. Lakeside Auction House. "This is Maris Tolland. Yes, I'd like to confirm the pickup for this afternoon. Yes, it's all on the lawn, same address. I've already itemized everything. And as we discussed, all proceeds go to the foster youth housing program." By the time I returned to the yard, the movers were stacking end tables next to the walkway. Selena noticed my phone in hand and narrowed her eyes. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "I made other arrangements." She didn't understand yet. Not until the auction house truck pulled in a sleek silver rig with a clipboard-carrying driver and 3 staff in matching polos. "Afternoon, Ms. Tolland," the driver called. "We'll be out of your way in no time." Selena's jaw dropped. You're giving our things away? You left them on private property, I said evenly. And I'm not giving them away. They're being auctioned for a cause that actually matters. She took a step toward me, but I didn't move. Connor stood frozen near the edge of the drive, rubbing his forehead like the weight of it all had finally landed. The auction team moved efficiently, tagging, photographing, lifting. Within an hour, every piece of furniture was gone. Selena stood in the now empty yard, stunned. That dresser belonged to my grandmother, she snapped. Then maybe you shouldn't have dumped it on land you don't own, I said, locking the gate behind them. By sunset, my phone had already buzzed a dozen times. Missed calls, angry voicemails, 2 frantic texts from Connor that read more like ultimatums than messages. By nightfall, I answered. You humiliated us, Selena said the moment I picked up. In front of our kids, in front of strangers. You sold our belongings. Do you know how illegal that is? Her voice shook with rage. Connor stayed silent in the background. I have full documentation, I replied, calm as ever. Photos of your furniture left unattended on my lawn. Video of your attempt to use a deactivated key. The security system logged it all. You had no right. You had no lease, no permission, no conversation, just expectations. Connor finally spoke. Mom, maybe we can still fix this, but you've made it really hard. You could be liable for damages. Emotional, at the very least. That one made me laugh. Quietly. I'm not interested in threats, Connor. I'm interested in boundaries. Which neither of you seem to understand. Silence stretched on the line. So I continued. I've notified the HOA. The property is under full security monitoring. The local police have been informed of the trespassing attempt and the storage of abandoned goods. You are not to return to the Lakehouse without written approval from me or my attorney. You'd really do this to your own son, Selena hissed. I let the question hang. Then I answered it. I didn't do anything to you. I made plans. Quietly, legally, respectfully. You barged over them and called it family. Another silence. We'll see about this, she said. You won't always be the one in control. The call ended with a sharp click. I set my phone down and opened my laptop. An email from the auction house had just arrived. Receipt of donation submitted. Amount raised $12,380. I forwarded it to my accountant, CC'd my attorney, then shut the screen. If they wanted to play hardball, I wasn't worried. I'd already poured the concrete for this boundary. They were just now discovering it. The invitation came with sugar on top. Just one more dinner, my mother had said over the phone. A peaceful talk. No drama. Just family. I should have known better. When I stepped into their dining room, the place looked frozen in time. Burgundy napkins folded into triangles, roast beef already carved, and seated at the far end of the table, Pastor Rick. My jaw clenched. He'd baptized Connor, buried my uncle. He was my parents' favorite moral mirror. Maris, he smiled gently. Your son thought it might help if I joined. Not to take sides. Just to listen. Selena placed a generous portion of roast on my plate. We've all said things. But surely you can see how hard this has been. Especially for the children, my son added. It's not too late to reconsider. You don't want this to divide the family. I didn't speak right away. I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder, and placed it beside my plate. These were taken 3 years ago, I said, after the hurricane flooded the Lakehouse. Pastor Rick leaned in as I flipped through the photos. Black mold creeping up the walls, furniture warped and ruined. Me in rain boots and gloves tearing out drywall alone. I sent messages. I asked for help. Everyone was too busy with that cruise to Aruba. My son shifted in his chair. His wife suddenly found her glass very interesting. Pastor Rick looked between them. I wasn't aware. I nodded. No one was. Because no one asked. Then I reached into my bag again. This time, I handed each of them a card. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. You're formally invited to the housewarming in 6 months. Guests only. RSVP required. No one spoke. I folded my napkin and stood. Family means showing up before the renovation, not just after it's beautiful. I walked to the door, their silence clinging to my heels. And by the time I pulled out of the driveway, I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. 6 months passed, like the tide, quiet, steady, reshaping everything in its path. I stood at the edge of the new balcony, coffee in hand, the lake reflecting soft morning light. The railing was warm under my palm, made from reclaimed cypress I chose myself. The breeze carried no voices, no demands, just the sound of birds and water, and the peaceful rhythm of a life I rebuilt on my own terms. Inside, the house glowed. My office overlooked the lake now with floor-to-ceiling windows. The hardwood floors no longer creaked, replaced and polished to a satin gleam. The kitchen had been redone top to bottom, designed not for crowds, but for comfort. Every room held the echo of my vision, not anyone else's expectation. That evening, I lit candles and opened a bottle of wine with a few friends. No family politics, no tension, just laughter, warm food, and easy conversation. When someone asked about the guest rooms, I smiled and said they were ready, just not for anyone who assumed they had a right to them. After everyone left, I stood in the doorway and looked around. No boxes, no dumped furniture, just clean lines, soft light, and air that didn't weigh me down. My phone buzzed. A message from Selena. "Can we talk?" I let the screen light fade for a moment. Then I typed back, "Next time, ask not, assume." And I turned off the lights.